In recent weeks, renewed attention has focused on the reported living arrangements of Prince Andrew, particularly after his move from the expansive grounds of Royal Lodge to a far quieter residence on the Sandringham estate. For decades, Royal Lodge stood as a visible symbol of Andrew's status within the royal family, a large, well-known property associated with privilege, history, and a certain level of importance. His new home, often identified as Wood Farm, presents a very different image. Set within a working rural estate, it reflects a slower, more private way of life, removed from the formality and visibility of Windsor. While such a move may appear on the surface to be a simple change of residence, the contrast between these two environments has sparked considerable public interest, particularly given the broader context of Andrew's recent years in the spotlight. What has added an unexpected layer to this situation is a detail that, under normal circumstances, would hardly attract attention at all. Reports from the surrounding area describe routine agricultural activity taking place close to the property, including the spreading of manure on nearby land, something entirely typical for estates of this kind. Farmers and estate workers regularly use natural fertilizers to maintain soil health and support plant growth, and such practices are an ordinary part of countryside life. However, the timing of this activity, combined with its proximity to Andrew's residence, has led to a wave of commentary from locals and observers. The presence of large manure piles, visible from nearby paths and noticeable in the air, has become a talking point in the community, drawing a mixture of amusement and curiosity. For residents familiar with rural living, there is nothing unusual about these conditions. Yet for many outside observers, the situation has taken on a more symbolic meaning. The contrast between Andrew's past public image, one tied to formal events, international travel, and royal ceremony, and his current surroundings has proven difficult to ignore. It has led some to view the scene not simply as a matter of geography, but as a reflection of changing circumstances. Conversations in local areas and across online platforms have highlighted this contrast, often with a tone that blends humor with disbelief. In this way, an otherwise ordinary agricultural detail has become part of a much larger narrative about reputation, perception, and public reaction. Despite the speculation, there is no evidence to suggest that the situation carries any intentional message. Estate management at places like Sandringham follows seasonal and practical needs, not personal considerations. Still, the way the story has been received says a great deal about how public attitudes have evolved. Moments like this, even when based on routine events, can quickly gain wider meaning when viewed through the lens of a well-known public figure. The attention surrounding Andrew's current environment reflects not only curiosity about his personal situation, but also a broader shift in how his role and image are understood today. In the end, what might otherwise have been a minor and temporary detail has become a widely discussed topic, illustrating how perception can transform everyday reality into something far more significant. The setting, the timing, and the reaction together create a moment that feels larger than the facts themselves. It serves as a reminder that, in public life, even the smallest details can carry unexpected weight, especially when they appear to mirror a story already unfolding in the public eye. Continuing from that point, the discussion around Prince Andrew and his reported new living situation at Sandringham Estate has gradually shifted from simple curiosity into something more reflective of public sentiment. What might have once been viewed as a private relocation is now being interpreted by some observers as part of a broader pattern of change in his public and personal life. This is not because of any single confirmed event, but because of how strongly contrast shapes perception. The difference between his former residence at Royal Lodge and his current surroundings has become a visual representation of how dramatically circumstances can evolve over time. Within this setting, everyday rural activity has taken on unexpected attention. The presence of agricultural work, including the use of natural fertilizers such as manure, is standard practice on estates like Sandringham. It is part of maintaining farmland, supporting woodland growth, and ensuring the long-term health of the environment. Yet in this particular case, the timing and visibility of such work near his residence has led to discussion that goes far beyond agriculture itself. Locals have commented on it in passing, often with humor, while online audiences have amplified the detail into something more symbolic than practical. This transformation of a routine farming process into a talking point reflects how quickly narratives can form when they involve public figures. The reaction also highlights how perception often fills in the gaps left by limited official information. In the absence of direct statements or explanations, people tend to interpret surroundings, timing, and coincidence in ways that create meaning. For some, the rural setting simply reflects normal estate life. For others, it becomes a metaphor for decline, transition, or separation from former status. Neither interpretation is confirmed by facts, but both show how public imagination interacts with real-world environments, especially when a well-known name is involved. At the same time, it is important to recognize that life within large working estates like Sandringham operates on its own rhythm. Seasonal land management, forestry work, and agricultural maintenance continue regardless of who is living nearby. These processes are long established and are not adjusted for individual circumstances. This reality often stands in contrast to how stories are framed in public discussion, where timing and coincidence can take on exaggerated meaning. In this case, what is routine for the estate becomes extraordinary only because of who is associated with it. As a result, the conversation surrounding the situation says as much about public interpretation as it does about the event itself. It reflects how narratives are built in modern media environments, where small details can quickly gain wider symbolic weight. Whether viewed as coincidence or commentary, the attention given to these details demonstrates how strongly public perception continues to follow figures like Prince Andrew, even when the events in question are rooted in ordinary, everyday activity. AS attention continues to surround the reported situation involving Prince Andrew and his residence at Sandringham Estate. The story has gradually moved beyond the details of location and into the broader question of perception. What makes this moment stand out is not a single confirmed event, but the way small and ordinary elements of rural life have been interpreted through a much larger public lens. In environments like Sandringham, daily estate work continues as it always has: quiet, practical, and seasonal. Yet when placed alongside a high-profile figure, even the most routine activity can become part of a wider narrative shaped by public imagination. The contrast between his former residence at Royal Lodge and his current surroundings plays a central role in how this story is understood. Royal Lodge, with its scale and formality, represented a long-standing connection to royal life and tradition. It was a space associated with status, visibility, and institutional continuity. In comparison, life on a working rural estate carries a very different atmosphere, less formal, more isolated, and closely tied to the rhythms of nature and agriculture. This shift in environment naturally invites comparison, even when no official statement frames it in such terms. Within this context, everyday estate activity has taken on an unusual level of attention. Agricultural practices such as soil preparation and fertilization are essential to maintaining the land at Sandringham. These processes are carried out regularly and have no connection to personal circumstances. However, when viewed from the outside, especially through the lens of public interest in a well-known figure, these normal activities can appear to carry unintended meaning. What is standard for the estate becomes symbolic in public discussion simply because of timing, visibility, and association. This is where perception begins to shape the story as much as fact. Without direct information or official commentary, observers often rely on surroundings and coincidence to form conclusions. A rural setting, a change in residence, or a visible agricultural process can quickly be interpreted in different ways depending on perspective. Some see only ordinary estate life continuing as usual. Others interpret the same scene as reflecting a broader shift in personal circumstances. Neither interpretation changes the reality of the situation on the ground, but both influence how the story is shared and understood. At the same time, the public reaction highlights how modern narratives form in real time. In today's media environment, small details can travel quickly and gain significance far beyond their original context. A single observation can become a wider talking point, not because of its intrinsic importance, but because of who it is connected to. In this case, the presence of routine rural activity near a private residence has been absorbed into a larger conversation about change, status, and public perception. Ultimately, the situation reflects how closely modern audiences follow figures like Prince Andrew and how easily ordinary circumstances can be reinterpreted through a symbolic lens. While the factual reality remains rooted in standard estate operations and private living arrangements, the public narrative continues to evolve in a different direction, one shaped by contrast, speculation, and the natural human tendency to find meaning in even the smallest of details. As the discussion continues to evolve around Prince Andrew and his reported residence on the Sandringham estate, the story increasingly reflects how modern public narratives are shaped less by confirmed events and more by interpretation. In this case, a simple change in living arrangements has become the foundation for a wider conversation about status, perception, and the meaning attached to environment. While the factual basis remains rooted in a private rural estate, the public response has expanded the story far beyond its original scope. Much of this attention stems from contrast. For decades, Andrew's life was associated with prominent royal properties such as Royal Lodge, a residence closely tied to royal tradition and visibility. That environment carried a sense of structure and formality, reflecting his previous position within the royal household. In comparison, a move to a working estate like Sandringham represents a significant shift in atmosphere. It is quieter, more rural, and shaped by the everyday rhythms of land management rather than public life. This difference alone has been enough to fuel ongoing public curiosity. Within this setting, ordinary estate operations have taken on unexpected significance. Activities such as farming, woodland maintenance, and soil treatment are routine parts of managing a large estate. These processes are not influenced by who is living nearby, nor are they adjusted for public figures. However, when placed against the backdrop of a well-known personality, even standard agricultural practices can become part of a broader narrative. Observers may begin to attach meaning to timing, location, or coincidence, even when no intentional message exists. This transformation of ordinary detail into symbolic interpretation is a familiar pattern in public storytelling. When information is limited or not officially clarified, audiences often fill in the gaps using context, imagination, and prior narratives. As a result, neutral events can appear more dramatic than they actually are. In this situation, rural estate activity has been viewed through multiple lenses, some seeing it as nothing more than routine maintenance, others interpreting it as reflective of broader personal change. Both perspectives emerge not from the facts themselves, but from how those facts are framed in public discussion. At the same time, this growing attention highlights the nature of modern media environments. Stories no longer remain fixed. They develop continuously as they are shared, discussed, and reinterpreted. A single observation can become a widespread talking point within hours, especially when connected to a high-profile individual. Over time, these interpretations can begin to overshadow the original context, creating a layered narrative that blends fact, assumption, and symbolism. Ultimately, the situation illustrates how public perception often extends beyond confirmed reality. While life on the Sandringham estate continues according to long-established routines, the story surrounding it continues to grow in meaning through external interpretation. In the case of Prince Andrew, this means that even ordinary surroundings become part of a much larger narrative, one shaped not only by events, but by how those events are seen, discussed, and understood by the public. As the narrative continues to unfold around Prince Andrew and his reported residence within the Sandringham estate, the focus increasingly shifts from specific details to broader interpretation. What began as discussion about a change in living arrangements has developed into a wider reflection on how public perception reshapes everyday reality. In rural environments such as Sandringham, life follows a steady and predictable rhythm shaped by land, weather, and seasonal work. Yet when that setting becomes linked to a high-profile figure, even routine aspects of estate life begin to carry unintended symbolic weight. The contrast with his former residence at Royal Lodge remains central to this perception. Royal Lodge, long associated with status and royal continuity, represents a very different world, one defined by formality, structure, and proximity to the center of royal life. By comparison, Sandringham offers a more secluded and practical environment, where the focus is less on ceremonial presence and more on the functioning of a working estate. This shift in setting naturally invites comparison, even when no official narrative defines it in such terms. It is the difference between appearance and atmosphere, between symbolic status and lived reality. Within this context, everyday estate activity has become an unexpected point of attention. Agricultural work, including soil preparation and the use of natural fertilizers, is a standard part of maintaining productive land. These processes are essential to the long-term health of the estate and are carried out regularly across rural properties throughout the United States.